So as a worship leader, one of our biggest roles, biggest responsibilities is to lead the people in front of us, to lead the congregation that are there at church. And our heart is that we would be pointing people to the incredible God who is worthy of all their praise, worthy of all their adoration for eternity. And we're hoping that through the songs we pick, we will be able to point people to this wonderful God. But the truth is that so many people come to church with lots of weight on their shoulders, lots of distractions going on in their lives. You might have someone who's fallen out with their spouse on the way into church or lost their patience with their kids. Maybe someone has recently had a loved one pass away, or they've broken up with a girlfriend or a boyfriend in the last week. Perhaps they're worrying about whether they're even going to have their job on Monday morning. And we as worship leaders want to take that all into consideration and help people by pointing them to the God who is far bigger than all of that, who eclipses all of that, but who is also with them through all of that stuff in their lives. We want to be sensitive, but also we want to lead people to the God who is higher than they are, who knows more than they do, whose ways are higher than their ways. And that is one of our big responsibilities as worship leaders. I want to give you a few tips about how you can do that practically. So here we go. Tip number 1, read the Bible out loud. And it sounds very simple, but actually it's the most incredible and powerful tool that we have as worship leaders. Before we even go into songs, reading out the Bible in a group of people is an incredible tool. 1 Timothy 4 verse 13, where the Apostle Paul is talking to Timothy, who's a young leader in the church. Paul tells Timothy to devote himself to the public reading of Scripture. God knows that when we read the Bible out loud over people, it will bring great freedom, great liberty, and it will allow people to take their eyes off the stuff of life, the mess of life, the burdens of life, the distractions of life, and fix their eyes on the God who is worthy of all their worship. We can declare truth over people. We can point them to the God who carries their burdens. You don't have to preach a sermon, but you can, with a simple reading of even one verse from the Bible, help to lift people's eyes and communicate truth to them. You can apply Scripture to the people right in front of you, right there and then. You've got a microphone, so I'd really encourage you to use it to read Bible verses over people. Take a moment to lead people by communicating the Bible to them. My next top tip is just around body language. So we communicate a lot through our body language. It's quite easy. I'm even doing it now with my hands and my smile. And it's true that actually people in a congregation will often hear a lot more of what we're communicating through the way we move our bodies and we use our face than our words. It's quite a scary thought. But if you look bored as you're leading people in worship, even if you're singing a song of celebration, people will likely take on board the fact that you're looking bored and will follow your lead. But if you smile, if you engage your body in the songs you're singing, if you engage your face, your facial expressions, your hands, your whatever it is that you're using, people will follow your lead, and you'll actually lead them into a far greater expression of worship than if you simply looked deadpan and bored the whole time. So just be aware of your body language and don't think that it's not important, because it really is. My third tip is about reading the room. So often, if we're leading worship or we're singing, we want to close our eyes, we want to put our hands in the air, we want to get lost in wonder. But actually, although that's not wrong, actually as a worship leader, when we're trying to lead a congregation, a group of people, that can actually be quite unhelpful. So my encouragement to you would be, use your eyes to read the room. Keep your eyes open, have a look out on the room. What's going on? What's God doing that you can see? How are people responding to the songs that you're singing? Is the person who's hosting the meeting down in front of you kind of giving you the eyes or kind of trying to get you to stop? What's going on in the room? Keep your eyes open, read the room, and actually you'll be able to work out how more effectively you can lead people. If everybody is very down, very glum looking, very sad faces, actually you might have to think very sensitively about how you're going to lead them through into truth. Actually going into an upbeat, jolly song isn't necessarily going to be what's going to serve them right then. But actually as you read the room, you work out how people are reacting, how people are feeling in that moment. You can lead far more sensitively and lead them through into greater things in God. My final tip is just about shepherding the flock. And a guy called Graham Ord, he says this, is often I think about worship leading as pastoring people through music. Our music helps people to meet with Jesus, and in turn, we are expectant that Jesus will meet with them. In this way, worship leading takes on a pastoral role. So it's our responsibility as worship leaders to actually lead the flock, the people in front of us. We're not simply just asked to play through a list of songs. Actually, we have an opportunity each time we gather together to sing, to lead, to teach, to encourage people, to explain things that are going on in the room, to pastor and direct the congregation in a way that actually they grow in maturity as disciples of Jesus. It's a real privilege. And if you've ever seen a flock of sheep, they're not exactly the smartest animals. And if they've got no leader, if they've got no shepherd to direct them and to teach them that that is not a good idea, then they're going to get themselves into all kinds of trouble. And actually, we as worship leaders have that responsibility to shepherd people through our times of worship. So one example of what that might look like might be this. You're on a Sunday, you're leading a congregation, and someone sings out in tongues. They sing out in a God-given language. And what do you do in that situation? Well, firstly, you could decide to move on quickly and continue leading into your next song. But actually, in that instance, what you're doing is you're at the risk of dishonouring the gift of tongues. You're discouraging that person maybe who's taken the boldness to step out and share. And actually, you're potentially leaving some of the immature people in the room thinking, scratching their heads thinking, what just happened? What was that? What was that all about? Or you could go for another option. You could maybe wait in silence until someone brings the interpretation. In this case, obviously, you're giving time to give someone to bring the interpretation, which is a very biblical thing to do, and it's honouring the gift of tongues. However, through just passively waiting and your lack of kind of clear leading and definition in that moment, actually, again, is at risk of making the congregation feel quite uncomfortable, making the new believer or the guest in your church feel a bit confused. So my top tip would be, in that situation, just to briefly explain what has just happened. Present the biblical expectation for an interpretation and leave the appropriate amount of space for this to happen. Doing this basically honours the gift of tongues and lovingly allows the less mature people in the room to actually understand what's going on and to grow in their understanding of what New Testament worship looks like. Through taking a strong lead from the front, the gift of tongues can do what 1 Corinthians 14:5 tells us that it's intended to do, so that the church may be built up and strengthened. It's really good. So my encouragement to you is shepherd the flock and take the opportunity that you have to lead and pastor people as you sing together. I hope that's been helpful, just thinking about how to lead a congregation. I look forward to seeing you guys and hearing from you guys about how you're putting into action. God bless.